You've gifted this firearm away. That person loses it or gets stolen from them.
Kills a bunch of drug dealers down in Mexico.
Yeah, it shows up next to a politician.
I'll just sing like a canary. I'm like, this is who I gave it to. Go deal with them. I didn't do it.
Well,
We are the Arms Attorneys. Today we are talking about gifting firearms because as this video originally airs, 'tis the season. It's coming up. It's coming up on Christmas season. And I know if I heard Santa's reindeer on the roof, and then I also heard exactly Santa's
I didn't know where you're going with that.
loading up the firearms he's going to put into the tree, it would be a good Christmas. I know I made the nice list. Stick around. We're going to talk about federal law, state law, and some practical considerations for gifting legally so that everyone has a very Merry Christmas. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button.
And the way to, I think we approach this is, think about federal law, state law. We're going to be talking about federal law. We're going to be giving some examples and just kind of general principles you should be looking for in your state law. But as always, your state law will control how you need to handle these things. Make sure to be following that. But federal law, I'll start with, and this is where a lot of people get tripped up, is, hey, look, I want to get a gift for someone. I go to the gun store, I'm purchasing a firearm, I'm going through the firearms transaction record, and I get this question about, are you the actual purchaser? So I think that's probably a natural place to start.
The dreaded question 21A on your 4473. Yes, it is. And the people who get tripped up by it are people who are buying firearms as gifts. So how does 21A read? It reads, are you the actual transferee/buyer of all of the firearms listed on this form? Warning, you are not the actual transferee/buyer if you are acquiring any of the firearms on behalf of another person. If you are not the actual transferee/buyer, the licensee cannot transfer any of the firearms to you. And of course, as any question on a 4473 that isn't your demographics, you're going to answer yes or no. So what does that mean? And we have some explanation.
Yeah, they have a explanation at the end of the form with regard to that specific question. But the way that folks should think about this is, are you spending your money to buy this firearm? That's kind of how I approach this thing, because if you're spending someone else's money, that's not a good idea. Or if you're buying a gun with your money, but you're going to get reimbursed, that's not a good idea. But if you're buying a firearm and it's your money, and you intend to turn around and gift the firearm, well, guess what? You're still buying the firearm with your money. That's how I think about it.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to go through this explanation on the form because we've got, for the purpose of this form, you are the actual transfer buyer. If purchasing or acquiring for yourself, retrieving it from consignment. By the way, never pawn your firearms.
Yeah, side note.
Public service announcement. If you're legitimately purchasing the firearm as a bona fide gift for a third party. A gift is not bona fide if another person offered or gave the person completing this form money, services, or items of value to acquire the firearm for him or her, or if the other person is prohibited by law from receiving or possessing the firearm. So, and I think that the last thing that we should just discuss quickly is that last part, because it's something that gives people a little bit of heartburn, I guess. Remember that, bona fide gifts are not straw man purchases, but you can be a straw man even if the other person is allowed to go purchase their own firearm. So don't play around. We've got a Supreme Court case exactly on that point. That's Abramski versus United States, 573 U.S. 169, decided in 2014. Wrongly, if you ask me. Justice Kagan delivered the opinion of the court, and Scalia dissented very wisely in it. It's worth a read.
Well, and I'll say the scenario that comes up, just kind of a little bit of a sidebar of how that comes up, especially like husband, wife, husband or wife goes in, purchase a firearm, they're erroneously denied. This happens a lot.
Yep.
And then so the husband's like, or the other spouse is like, you know what, I'll go buy it. Well, that's where we run into that issue. Just wanted to kind of give folks that red flag so they know, hey, that's a situation to avoid. Go to a different gun store, get the denial cleared up first, all that other stuff. Just kind of a helpful hint.
Yeah, no, because it is easy to become a straw man. The only exception to it being your bona fide gifts. So, state law.
Yeah, so state law, and the way that I would approach this is, some states, it's highly regulated. Some states kind of medium regulated. Some states like Texas make it really stinking easy. So let's kind of work our way backwards where it's like, hey, you have to go through a federal firearms license dealer in order to transfer firearms. Think of folks who hate the Second Amendment. Your state probably, if you live in one of these states, you probably know. The medium states examples of this might be like Colorado, where hey, you can private transfer firearms, but perhaps
like,
it has, perhaps it has to be to a relative.
It's based on like levels of consanguinity. Is that word? I always mispronounce it, but I mean you're looking at direct relatives.
And then I'll say pretty much the majority of states will have private transfer of firearms not regulated. Generally if they are, they're going to have what I'll say minimum requirements. Must be 18 years of age or older, residents of the same state, can't know or have reason to believe the person's prohibited. So
if you're in Texas, they can't be intoxicated.
Yep, that's another one.
The law. We got a lot of drunkies trying to buy guns.
Yeah,
you gotta wait till they sober up.
But the same rules for private transfer typically apply to gifts.
Yes, absolutely, because a gift is a transfer, right? I mean, the only thing I can think of in this sort of arena that is not a transfer would be a temporary loan.
Right. For like say you have relatives visiting from out of town and they're going to go duck hunting or hunting like that. Even the federal law has this temporary for sporting purposes exception. I'm sure your state has something like that.
Right. Absolutely. But a gift is a permanent transfer. Permanent transfer rules do apply. So practically speaking, if you live in one of those more difficult states, what does that mean for you? Well, you may just want to go jump through all the hoops. You've bought it for a gift and you walk back into the FFL dealer with your loved one. It's not really a surprise at that point. And you make the transfer happen legally and lawfully. Great. It might be that buying the gift card from the gun store is your best option so that you can just leave that under the tree and let it be. It really is non-ideal, but for those of us in very free states, you still might want to do a little paperwork, huh? Yeah.
So the issue becomes, hey, especially since the passage of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, this is the John Cornyn traitor to the Second Amendment kind of led the way on this. And it shouldn't be an issue, but I think it has changed the way people do business a little bit with regard to documenting transfers of firearms, because we changed.
I'm just laughing. If you live in Texas, all of the John Cornyn attack ads and the like coming up. We're just like,
oh, I haven't seen them. Are they good?
Oh, they're real, because John Cornyn and anyone who wants to primary him, everyone's just running ads that are like, President Trump loves me more. No, he loves me more. He didn't like you that much. And they're just that's just the nature of all of the ads. They're pretty funny. I mean, and I'm like, I think, does President Trump love all of his children equally? I don't know.
So, all right.
Very funny.
Back on track. But But John Cornyn, he really did. He did quite a disservice with the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And so it's added some confusion with regard to transferring firearms, whether you should document these things. I'll say, and these are going to fall into, again, kind of our 3 state categories. Is documentation required under federal law? No. So throw that out the window. Is there limitations on who you can transfer it under federal law? Yeah. Can't give it to, like, say, until these infringements are repealed. Just telling you the current state of the law. Transferring firearms to folks or should have reason to believe that are prohibited, that could be a crime under federal law. And so when we're gifting these firearms, documentation, nothing to look for on the federal side. But your state law may have a requirement. I doubt it. I doubt they do. Depending on which of these categories. Super strict, you're probably going to an FFL. Family member, well, I don't know whether or not there's going to be documentation necessary in Colorado or not, but Texas, I'll give us as an example. No documentation is legally required for a transfer, but to Emily's original point, is it a good idea? I'll say in my experience, yes. I think minimal documentation is a good idea.
Yeah, we advised against it for a while before the rule on engaging in the business was struck down. But this really wouldn't apply to that anyway, because that rule was directed towards making a profit, or even if you didn't make a profit, if you intended to make a profit, you're nefarious, you're just bad at being a businessman, I suppose, you could have been prosecuted under that rule. Not only is the rule struck down now, but if it is a bona fide gift, there is no intent to profit at all. I think you're probably okay to document. I mean, I will say, I generally tell people too, it's a good idea. I don't really practice what I preach, though. I mean, I can say both in transfers with loved ones and just friends, people I'm friendly with. I just have never done a private sale documentation.
Yeah, and when does it come up? All right, so you've gifted this firearm away. That person loses it or gets stolen from them.
Kills a
Well,
bunch of drug dealers down in Mexico.
yeah, it shows up next to a politician.
I'll just sing like a canary. I'm like, this is who I gave it to. Go deal with them. I didn't do it.
Well, for their purposes, maybe they want documentation so that they, if a firearm's stolen, how are you going to locate the serial number if you haven't documented it? That's a good source for that information to share with the police department. So hopefully the firearm makes its way back to you. Or, if you're the transferee, the person you gifted the firearm to, if it gets stolen, for whatever reason, they trace it all the way back to you, point of sale. Hey, look, you're the original purchaser. Being able to confidently say, hey, I gave this as a gift to XYZ person. Those are the two scenarios that come up most frequently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if you're not concerned about either of those two and documentation's not legally required, I don't know that it's that big of a concern.
Yeah. Choose your own adventure. So, gifting your firearms this Christmas or whenever, really, it is quite easy in most of the country. If you're in a place to do it, do it. We need more guns.
Yeah.
More guns under trees.
And if you are concerned about whether, hey, how do I comply with this legally? Obviously consult with an attorney of your choosing, licensed in your state. They'll be able to give you a rundown, let you know how to do this legally. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
Yes, and please question and comment below, especially if you want to buy us firearms for Christmas. We'll let you know how to transfer them to us. Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.